Hi, this is Greg McCoach, editor of the Mining Speculator. I'm here at the May 2022 Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver, Canada. Welcome to the conference. I've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to jump right into it. Of course, right now, our metals prices are getting hammered. Our mining shares are taking it on the chin. It's not very pleasant, but I'm here with some good news in that regards. While it may be difficult for a while, I believe Richard Russell was correct that before the biggest moves come, there's going to be this moment where they pound the metals down. And I think we're in that moment right before some tremendously important things are about to happen. I'm going to try to explain all this in as short a period of time as I can. And so let's get started. It's called the Great Reset. What is the Great Reset? What is it? Is this for real? Will it succeed? Is the Great Reset a conspiracy theory, imagining a vast left-wing plot to establish a totalitarian government? The answer is no, despite the fact that some people may have spun some conspiracy theories based on it. But it is real, and with some explanation, I hope to show you from historical facts and quotes from the very people who are running the show that the Great Reset is very real and is going to happen most likely this fall. Where did this term come from? The specific phrase Great Reset came into general circulation over a decade ago with the publication of a 2010 book called The Great Reset by American urban studies scholar Richard Florida. In Florida's book, which he wrote after the 2008 financial crisis, he argued that the crash was the latest in a series of great resets, including the Long Depression of the 1870s and the Great Depression of the 1930s, which he defined as periods of paradigm-shifting systemic innovation. Where does the term come from? It actually comes from Klaus Schwab. He is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. He's the one that really originated this term. I'm going to explain to you how and why. Terry Malloret co-authored a book with Klaus Schwab called COVID-19, The Great Reset. I'll explain all this a little bit later as we'll get into it. Who is Klaus Schwab? Here he is. He looks like some guy out of a James Bond movie, you know, Dr. Evil, Spectre, you know, the guy running the evil empire. But as you will see, I believe this guy is not in the best interest of what's in our best interest as investors and citizens of the world. He's going to try to prove otherwise. But anyway, 4 years after Florida wrote his book, at the 2014 annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab declared, what we want to do in Davos this year is to push the reset button. These type of people, who I call the PTSP, the powers that shouldn't be, always meet in Davos, Switzerland once a year. At that meeting in 2014, they used this reset button. The reset button then appeared on their website. So since 2014, this has been a term that has been widely promoted by these people. Klaus Schwab, who is he? You know, he was a engineer by training, and he wrote a book in 1971 called Modern Enterprise Management and Mechanical Engineering. In this book, Schwab promoted the idea of the Great Reset, which he would later call stakeholder capitalism. Remember that term, we'll talk about it. Schwab and the WEF have promoted this term ever since. What is stakeholder capitalism? Schwab coined the term that management of an enterprise must serve not only its shareholders, but its stakeholders as well to achieve long-term prosperity and growth. Of course, he makes it sound like it's something good until you find out all the details and fine print of what it really means. I've often said to my subscribers, beware of terms the powers that shouldn't be in this world create. They're very adept at using terminology to confuse and confound the people, like quantitative easing, stakeholder capitalism, critical race theory. These are mostly lies and deceptions and misleading information to keep you from understanding what's really at stake. In the co-authored book, Malloret and Schwab, they pit stakeholder capitalism against neoliberalism, which is defined as a corpus of ideas and policies favoring competition over solidarity, creative destruction over government intervention, and economic growth over social welfare. In other words, neoliberalism refers to the free enterprise system. In opposing that system, stakeholder capitalism entails corporate cooperation with the state and vastly increased government intervention in the economy. In 2018 and 2019, the WEF organized 2 events. Now, these are simply historical facts. I'm not making this up, even though some people may question what these events were really about. In May of 2018, the WEF collaborated with Johns Hopkins University. Collaborated with Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security to conduct Claude X, a simulation of a national pandemic response. Clearly, this was preparation for a global pandemic. This was in 2018, long before the COVID situation happened. Then in October 2019, they again collaborated with Johns Hopkins and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on another pandemic exercise, Event 201, which simulated an international response to the outbreak of a novel coronavirus. This was 2 months before coronavirus outbreak happened in China and 5 months before the WHO declared it a pandemic. Okay, what's going on here? You got to ask that question. In June of 2020, at its 50th annual meeting in Davos, the WEF announced the Great Reset's official launch. And a month later, Schwab and Malleret published their book on COVID and the Great Reset. The book declared that COVID represents an opportunity that can be seized, that we should take advantage of this unprecedented opportunity to reimagine the world. Okay, this is about a new world they want to create. What does all of this mean? The Great Reset aims to usher in a bewildering economic system, Schwab's stakeholder capitalism, which Italian philosopher Giorgio Agamben called communist capitalism. In brief, stakeholder capitalism involves the behavioral modification of corporations that benefit not shareholders, but stakeholders, individuals and groups that stand to benefit or lose from corporate behavior. This is the social justice aspect of the Great Reset that we see happening in our society. To comply with this, governments, banks, and asset managers use the ESG to squeeze non-woke corporations and businesses out of the equation. The ESG is essentially a social credit score that is used to drive ownership and control of production away from non-woke or non-compliant, This is not just a suggestion, it is an implicit threat. Be woke or else, right? The problem with this, as I see it, the proponents, and this is a direct quote from Michael Rechtenwald, Chief Academic Officer from the American Scholars. This gentleman is totally straightforward, very honest, very high integrity, wouldn't be involved with anything related to conspiracy theory. Here's a quote from him. Proponents of the Great Reset hold neoliberalism, okay, the current system of capitalism that we've had, responsible for our economic woes. I disagree. The powers that shouldn't be in their Federal Reserve have directly been responsible for creating what's happening right now. And his quote, but in truth, the governmental favoring of industries and players within industries, which used to be known as corporatism or economic fascism, has been the real source of what Schwab and his allies at the WEF decry. So Michael Rechtenwald, great quote. In my view, it's all about power and control, divide and conquer. I've talked about this many times at other conferences and the newsletter. The powers that shouldn't be, they keep us divided. They own the media. They control the messages. They want us to hate one another. They use anything that's divisive, skin color, racial differences, national differences, religious differences, all kinds of things, anything, man against woman, right? The draconian lockdown measures employed by Western governments managed to accomplish goals of which the socialists at the WEF could only dream. Above all, the destruction of small businesses, eliminating competitors from the corporate monopolies favored by the state. This is so obvious, right? The statistics clearly show in the United States, I've looked at this, out of all the businesses that went out of business during COVID, 60% of them remained out of business. Only 40% were able to recover. So it's a nightmare for that sector. What does this mean? Other developments that advance the Great Reset agenda have included the unfettered immigration, travel restrictions for the otherwise legal border crossings, the Federal Reserve's unrestrained creation of money and the subsequent inflation now that has shown up, which of course it's created, increased taxation, increased dependence on the state, broken supply chains, and the restrictions and job losses due to vaccine mandates. Now we're hearing about problems that are going to be coming with food, okay? All of this is by design. It's not happenstance in my view, but you be the judge. Summing it all up, I believe a crescendo of events is now unfolding. The circumstances of the last 3 years are all leading to the Great Reset moment, which I believe is set for this fall and will give amazing power to those I refer to as the PTSB, the powers that shouldn't be. I believe the Fed cannot stop inflation and will do very little to stop it. To really stop inflation at this point, they'd have to raise the interest rates above the real rate of inflation, which is easily 10 to 12%. That's game over for world governments that would have so much interest to pay on its current debt. It's game over. This inflation, along with all the other problems that have been created, supply shortages, the coming food shortages, bubble markets imploding, et cetera, will be used as the cover to bring about the ultimate game plan, which is the one world currency, the new world order, the real great reset that has been the agenda all along. So this is what's coming, folks. I believe gold. How does all this relate to what we do? Why we are attending this conference? It's because we believe that precious metal prices will rise despite what we're seeing, okay? The current takedown of the metals prices, despite that, gold will soon do its thing as the agenda and the aim of the Great Reset unfolds, and as people become more aware, as they see these very negative things that are happening in our society and around the world. Gold will make its move, the big one that we've always talked about, that could have happened in 2008 but didn't, okay? We know it's coming. Have faith. Richard Russell said, right before the biggest move, right when all this comes to a head, he said, the gold bull will rip and snort and roar and kick and try to get rid of as many investors off its back as possible. In other words, the gold bull wants to take as few of us as possible. The powers that shouldn't be know that there's weak hands out there. They're shaking the market. They're hoping that the weak people give up the ghost and sell their precious metals. They will be buying, okay? I'm here to tell you, don't sell, don't panic. This is the most critical moment in the whole period of time that I've been a newsletter writer. I've often spoke about this, that it was coming, okay? It almost happened in 2008, but now it's here. There's no more pushing the can down the road, none of that. I believe that this fall, by October, we will be in a very different world than what we currently know. And that's the bad news. It's going to be difficult. This is why I've taken a preparedness mindset about things, try to help people understand that it'd be important to be prepared for potential food shortages, for potential chaos and confusion in world civil unrest in the big cities, things like this. Do whatever you can. We don't have much time left at this point, but if you understand this message, do what you can. Use your assets to do whatever preparations you can in a very short period of time. Now, the big move in gold, this is going to be a huge catalyst for our junior mining shares. This is where we're going to shine. I've always taught people that when our market moves in a very big way, when all the boats float and we're all making money, right? It's because the funds come into the market with a vengeance. Without them, it's just retail investors, and there's never enough retail investors to really get us going like we always hope for and have, as we've seen in the past. Those type of markets only come when the funds come. That's why I've always paid attention to that Beaver Creek conference in the fall, because I always wanted to know what these guys were doing. These are the biggest managers of capital, pools of capital in the world. I want to know what they're doing. Up to this point, they've just been dipping their toe in the water. But with what's going on, they understand what's happening. They're going to move into gold, and they're going to move into the precious metal mining shares. This is going to be truly a breathtaking moment to make money, despite the fact that we're going to be living in a very difficult world. That's the bad news. That's the good news. The good news, bad news kind of scenario. Yes, we can make a lot of money. The bad news is that what are we going to be dealing with worldwide? Could be very unfortunate. With that being said, a note of hope. Again, a Michael Rectenwald quote. I didn't want to leave this in a negative way. I'm an optimist by nature. I always hope for the best. I prepare for the worst. But I believe that we are witnessing a crescendo of events. They're all coming to a head and will culminate in this great reset by October. And we don't have to wait long. We're all going to see it. And so we just do the best we can. So he said, because the goals of the Great Reset depend on the obliteration, not only of free markets, but of individual liberty and free will, it is perhaps ironically unsustainable. Like other attempts at totalitarianism, the Great Reset is doomed to ultimate failure. That doesn't mean, however, that it won't, again, like earlier attempts, leave a lot of destruction in its wake, which is all the more reason to oppose it now and with all our might. I couldn't agree more. For people that are kind of sitting on the fence or don't really understand this, they think some of this stuff sounds good, it's just okay. I beg you to rethink this. You don't understand what's really happening. That they say certain things to make it sound palatable, to make it sound good. But when you dig down, you find out the truth. It's ugly. It's an ugly reality. And as I said, regardless of whether you believe me or not, you'll soon find out. Okay. I couldn't say anything else but this message today. The whole situation of showing charts and graphs, I've done that. It's led to this moment. Now, this is the big picture. You have to understand the big picture. As an investor, what can we really do? You know, a lot of this stuff is out of our control. So we just do the best we can. And I believe as investors and citizens, we are now going to be faced with the greatest economic chaos and confusion we have ever faced in our lifetimes. This is it, folks. This is going to be some kind of deal. Hold on to gold, hold on to your metals. Beyond that, check in with your belief system. You know, there's going to be a lot of people, I think, find God in this equation. So with that, I'll turn it over back to the conference. And again, I wish everybody the best. I'll be writing about this in the newsletter coming up here in May. I'm going to be working on that next week. I'm going to be talking about these issues in more detail. Again, I would encourage everyone to study this for yourselves. Look into this gentleman who I've quoted. He did a very good article and has been talking about this publicly. I think he's done a lot of amazing research that proves the points that I'm trying to make here. And he goes much further. He goes into greater detail that gets even scarier. But I think you can see that we're fast approaching a time that is going to be very challenging for all of us. Thanks for listening.